I'm Ryan, this is my brother Daniel, this is Rolls in the Family, and today we are talking about something we have never talked about before. In fact, we're talking about 5 games that each of us have never talked about on this channel. We thought this would be fun. Is what are our top 5? We just got done ranking our top games of all time, and when we do that, we actually do rank beyond 50. We just do our whole collection. So we thought it'd be fun to talk about what are the 5 highest ranking ones that have never appeared in a video on the channel. They just never make it quite into a top play or into our top 50.
Yeah, so you can be assured these are not good games.
Yeah, if you're here for the good games, this is not the video for you. But if you want to hear about some games that obviously we've chosen to own, like we feel, and if you've seen our culling, games to get rid of video, we're pretty relentless with getting rid of games. So, but just by staying in the collection, it's an endorsement from us that it's worth playing.
Very true.
So this will be an interesting one. I have absolutely no idea what's going to show up on your list, and I'm looking at my list.
Some of them aren't even board games.
It'll be fun to talk about these. Daniel's not a rules follower, but we'll have links to all these in the description below. I don't know if there's really a call out to our viewers as far as something to drop in the. What's your top game that you haven't mentioned to us in the comments?
I love that.
It doesn't translate as well, I think, to our viewers.
That. No, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Tell us about it below.
Tell us about it below.
But we'll go ahead and jump in here with Daniel's number 5.
Gosh, I can't wait to read the comments. This is going to be great. So my number 5. So this is starting with the lowest rated of the 5.
The lowest rated of the highest rated that we haven't talked about.
Everyone tracking? Good.
Yeah.
So my number 5 for a game that I've never talked about is one that I've owned for some time now. I'm trying to think. You've played it, I believe, with me, but is one that's kind of hung around in the collection, and it's one that I really enjoy in terms of kind of the simplicity of it. And this is going to go to Tiny Towns. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, Ryan, you have played this with me,
I have
correct?
played this one. I think a couple times, actually, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, so this one, you've got your kind of grid in front of you, and the fun thing in this game is that on each person's turn, one person draws, or sorry, not draws. Gosh, what am I even talking about?
One calls out a resource.
There we go.
Yeah.
Calls out a resource, and then everyone has to place that resource. And then essentially, there's all of these buildings that if you make the certain shape with the matching resources, you can consolidate those resources and place the building. And so it's really a game of trying to keep your options open, because especially the interesting thing about this game is it changes drastically with the amount of players you're playing with.
Yeah.
If you're playing a 3-player game, it's like, okay, you've got 33% control on what's getting called. Playing a 6-player game, oh man, it's a crapshoot. So that's kind of an interesting thing about it. But yeah, really fun one in that. Kind of has a little bit of the like Tetris feel, but in terms of keeping, you want to be as flexible as possible, right? So that when other people are calling resources, hopefully you can handle whatever resource is being called. And then each building scores differently. Those are randomized each game, which I think is a really fun. And because you're participating on every person's turn, it keeps people engaged the entire game and plays really quick. So I've had really good experiences with it. I've had a few poor ones because it is one that like you can have a horrible game.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's this really weird like balance of being this really accessible, like welcoming game, but also like how much you can hose yourself in this game versus other games. Because if you ever fill up all your 16 spots, you're done. And so if you aren't good about like doing it in a way that like you're able to consolidate things to buildings.
Oh my gosh. We had a game of this with my wife's father, and it was late and we're playing, and I'm pretty sure he had like 2 buildings out and the rest of the squares are resources, and we're like, how does that even happen? It was tragic. So I don't think he liked that game very much, but honestly, it's one that still, for me, it feels like it fills just a nice niche in that kind of space. It's not super long, which is cool.
Yeah.
Kind of plays quickly. So even if you have a poor game, a lot of times people want to, switch up the buildings, play again. So there you go. That is my number 5 not talked about.
Yes. Think you excited to do that 4 more times?
I'm sure it'll be better by the last one.
Yes. Very nice. My number 5 is one that I actually ran across because the designer of it, I knew from his work actually on video games and kind of the indie video games. And I had grown up making, little video games with our older brother. And
not me.
We're both now software engineers. So that definitely was like a direct path there, but knew some of the games that this guy had worked on. And he saw on like his Twitter that he had gotten more into kind of board game design. And this is the game Spots. And this is
I didn't know this whole background about Spots.
Yeah, this background.
Wow.
He also did
Nice.
Land, Air, and Sea, I believe.
Oh, okay.
John Perry. That's the name that's evading me as I
Nice.
Just like say that guy that
Yeah, that yeah.
But Spots is a really clever twist on the just put dice push your luck game. So there's games like I have Can't Stop, which is like the most distilled, just like pure, like let's just push our luck style of game. But for me, Spots twists it enough into like this formula that I really enjoy. You basically are trying to complete 6 dogs first, and each one of the cards are these cute dog illustrations where the pips on the dice are like the spots on the dogs. That's kind of like the whole thematic thing. Very cute. And each turn, so you start with like a couple of these dogs, and each turn you have to pick one of the available tricks to perform. So you're going to pick a trick, and that trick is usually going to say like, you're going to run. So you get to roll 3 dice, and after that you can roll 1 die like any number of times. And whenever you roll dice, you have to put them onto your dogs anywhere where you have spots. You have spaces that match that. So like a 5 or a 4. But if you can't place a die, it has to get buried in your backyard, which is bad because if ever all the dice in your backyard are above 7, you bust and you lose all your progress on your current dog. So all the dice come off. Mm-hmm. And so you're kind of like pushing your luck within a turn of like, how much you can do and which trick do you go after? Like, ooh, this trick could finish my dogs, but it's also like kind of high risk because I'm maybe rolling more dice or, and there's ways to get treats in the game, the little dog bones that let you re-roll, but you always have to re-roll everything you just rolled. So you can't just like keep some things. But one thing that I think is really interesting about Spots versus some other push your luck games is whether it's Quacks of Quedlinburg, Can't Stop, or some of these games, usually the pushing of your luck is like within your turn. You push, and then like that's it. Mm-hmm. Whereas Spots, it has this element of pushing your luck over multiple rounds because you can stop and you're like partially, you did your trick, you're partially filled on your dogs. Maybe I finished one of the dogs, but some of my other dogs are still in progress. When it gets to my turn, you can give up your turn to flip all your completed dogs, essentially locking them in and they're safe now. Or you can keep going with a trick, which is enticing because if ever you complete all of your current dogs, they auto flip. So like you don't have to take a turn off to do that. So you really want to do that, but the closer you get to that, the fewer spaces you have to put something. So the higher chance you're going to not be able to place dice and go to bust. So it's a very fun dynamic, and it ultimately leads to this climax of, because when somebody finishes their 6th dog, they immediately win. So the game always ends with an exciting moment of somebody rolled exactly what they needed without busting to get their final dog.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's also got, something you see, I think, often in push your luck games where the people who are behind start just pushing harder because it's like, well, I got to catch up.
I know.
And so, yeah, it really, I think it works really well. And then we love variability, and it adds all the tons of tricks that you can swap in and out. So every game, there's like 2 of them that are always the same, but the other 4 tricks can be, from a variety of different ones, which keeps it fresh. So great little cute, and it's got a cute theme. You can get people to play it just because they, like the little illustrated
I know,
dogs.
maybe that was the difference, because, Can't Stop isn't my...
Daniel's not a big Can't Stop.
Not a big Can't Stop guy, but I enjoyed this one. So I did win last time, so, that helps. Very nice, Ryan. My number 4. Oh gosh, this game has such a special place in my heart, in the heart of my wife and I. This game, you could argue, is the reason we are married and have children today. And this is going to go to Stone Age.
Wait, is this just because it's got a love HUD in it?
You know, Ryan, we're not going to
confirm
neither
nor
here nor
deny.
there. Wow. So Stone Age, gosh, we got this way back. I mean, this is...
that was in the early collection for us.
This was back when we had a shared collection. I ended up being the one that took it, I guess. And what people don't know is we actually we wrestled over each game, you know? Yeah.
Every game in sequence. It was exhausting.
It was real exhausting. But anyway, so Stone Age is just an awesome, like, for me in my collection, it's just this, like, kind of one of my top just gateway games. You know, when I think of, like, you know, someone kind of newer to maybe modern board games, and this is, like, kind of right in there with, like, the Ticket to Ride, you know, stuff like that. This is a great option.
Especially for worker placement.
Exactly.
Like if you want to kind of introduce worker placement, this is a great way to do it.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of things going for it. One, I think it looks beautiful on the table.
Yeah.
Everything about it looks great except for that awful smelling rolling cup. My goodness, why was that in there? Don't smell it, folks. Don't smell it.
That's for who loses.
Oh, yeah, that's actually the punishment.
30
you just have to
seconds
hold
in
it
the
over your
cup.
30 seconds in the cup. New house rule. I love it. But anyways, yeah. So a game of worker placement, but then you're on your turn, you're pulling your workers back. I'm sorry, Ryan, you just had me just lost it with the 30 seconds of the cup.
Sorry.
I can't get it out of my mind. You pull your workers back, and then you're rolling dice based off how many workers kind of you're pulling back to get resources and stuff like that. But different resources are, you take the total of your dice and divide it by a different amount.
Yeah, if you don't like adding a bunch of dice and then dividing.
Adding and dividing.
You do have to do that a lot in this game.
I know. I'm thinking about with our kids, like this, when we get to the division unit, this game is what we're doing. But anyways, then there's some special actions as well. Like you can go and you can increase your kind of food production because you have to be able to feed your people every round. You can go and get another tool, which tools are helpful because they can, for every tool that you use, it can add to your total for dice. So, you know, if you're one short of being able to get another gold, you could use a tool and bump it up. And then as Ryan was referencing earlier, you can send 2 people to the... Is it there's no way it's actually called the Love Hut. That had to be just
it probably isn't, but I think colloquially in the board game space,
that's what it's known as. Well, you send 2 people there and you come back with a third. So
we don't know the mechanics of it.
We don't know the mechanics.
You grow your family somehow.
Yeah, you grow your family. So that's how you get more workers to place. But this was I think this was like the first kind of modern board game my wife and I played together at college. And it was just a blast. And I think it really, I mean, she hadn't really played much and was really kind of grabbed onto it and loved it. And so this one's hung around not only because it's just worked in so many, different areas of kind of where a gateway game is what you're looking for, but I'm even thinking down the road of, kids, starting to get older. This is going to be the worker placement game that I go to. Maybe we'll get my first Stone Age. First.
Maybe, although that one's like completely different.
Yeah,
it's like a memory game.
Oh my!
It's like not even worker placement.
Okay, well, never mind. But
warning.
But yeah, so this one's been great. It's not one that like we pull out a ton. Like it's fun, but it's not like...
Yeah, it's been so long since I played it. I'd love to play it again.
Yeah, but it's a really really good one, and yeah, I don't really see it leaving our collection.
Yeah, it's got a pretty unique element with the worker placement of this push your luck of you have to determine where you want to put all your people before you know
what you roll,
how efficient. I sent 4 people here, but how many stone are they going to come away with?
Yeah.
Do I commit to building this hut that needs me to get a certain amount? So there's definitely some room to really push it. And that's where, if you get the tools, you can mitigate that a lot by having that flexibility. But I've definitely had games where I haven't leaned hard into tools and you're just like...
The amount of times on the oak... Because if you... in the amount of times on my opening turn, I spread too thin and can't feed my people and start the game at negative 10 points. It's happened way too often, man. Way too often. So, yeah, rough start. But
rough start.
Stone Age.
Nice. Yes. Classic. My number 4 is one that is one of the newest games to my collection. So kind of a contrast to Stone Age. I've only played this a couple times, though you did get to try it once when we were on our family vacation. In fact, it was just you, me, and our older brother. Not very often that just us three brothers play a game together. But I knew our older brother was going to love this game, and I suspected you would probably like it. In fact, you played it twice, I guess.
I was going to say, if we're talking about the one I'm thinking.
This is A Message from the Stars. And this is one of those games that I add to my collection knowing I'm going to like this game. Most of the people I play games with are not going to like this game. But like, if I can just find the few that will, like, we'll probably have a really good time because and my two brothers are an example of who will like this game. And honestly, I don't know who else at this point. Like,
well, there we go. We'll have our once a year.
We'll have who else would like this game. But it's very much this deduction game that leans both into kind of like number deduction with like kind of how basically you're passing words back and forth, and the alien player knows like the secret code of how these words get scored. So there's certain letters that if they're in the word will add 1, and there's certain letters that if they're in the word will multiply the total by 2, and then there's a letter that'll like make it go negative. And so the alien player is giving the human team a word and saying this is the score for this word. And so as the human team, you are trying to deduce what letters could be in these different spots of the code based on the scores of these words.
This is a really hard game to describe, by the way.
Yeah, so the alien is trying to help by giving like what's the most useful word I could give them that's going to tell them the most. And then the human team gets to request a word. So you get to send a word back, and then the alien will be like, this is the score of this. And that in and of itself is very interesting. This kind of like, what the numbers are and which ones can we rule out. And because, it was 6, like we think it multiplied, but it had to have 3 of the base letters to get to 3. And so you may already know listening to this, if this is not your type of game, just because of that like math element.
Yeah.
And the like, it's a word game and thinking of words. But really, I think the twist on top of this that really brings it together into something that works is that each team also has this secret message that at the beginning of the turn was 3 words randomly selected from these lists of 6. You just like roll a die to pick them. And at the end of the game, the other player, either the alien or the human, is going to have to guess which of the 6 words from each list was the one that was selected. And the only way you have to communicate that is with the words that you're passing back and forth. So it's not just what word gives me or gives the other team the most information about the code, but what is going to help them with the guessing them at the end. And it really is a fun exercise for people who like that kind of thing of sitting there and thinking of a word. And it's like, oh man, it'd be great if I could think of a word that has, a few of these letters, but also has this letter, but also means, is related to this thing. Then this is going to be the type of game for you. We were pretty good at it. The 3 of us, like the standard game, you play like 4 rounds back and forth. I think we came to the conclusion we'd love to play like the little bit harder version they recommended where you just do 3. Yeah. Because then you really only have 1 chance at cluing each of the, unless you can be really clever and like dual clue something.
And our alien was just way too talented at the game, right? So.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who was, I guess there were 2 different games. I was the alien for one of them, and then you were the alien for the other.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yes. But yeah, if that, that description may have been very confusing, but perhaps it was enough to tell you what is
anything about
a game for you. I don't know that it's one that's going to get played a lot. It can support a lot of players, though now playing it, I'm like, I don't know that you would want a ton of human players. Like with this type of game, there's going to be people that are making the connections more quickly and like having it come more naturally. So it's going to be pretty common that there's going to be players that are like, well, I'm kind of along for the ride.
Right.
But with a small group that likes this type of game, I really have enjoyed A Message from the Stars.
Yeah, that one, that was playing the alien in that one, that was fun. I really enjoyed that mental exercise. Very, very unique. Okay, Ryan, over to my number 3. I would argue this game is up there with my most analysis paralysis prone games in my collection. It can really lock you up with options.
One thought. I'm
it's got some similarities to Mancala, and this is going to go to Five Tribes.
That was my guess.
There you go. Very nice, Ryan.
I couldn't remember if you still had it, actually.
I do still have it. Yeah, we'll see kind of long term on it. I've only played it like several times, and I think every time it's been really fun. You know, it's one of where you have kind of this large grid with all of these meeples of different colors kind of placed out there, and on your turn you can grab all the meeples from one spot and then begin, moving in it to adjacent spaces, but you have to drop a meeple along the way. And then wherever you finish, you get to basically, take the action of the meeple, the last colored meeple that you drop, including all the same color and whatnot at the place that you finish. So, the interesting thing about that is, not only are you thinking about, okay, where am I trying to finish and, to get, the most powerful thing there, but you're changing the whole board state with where you're dropping things, which is for your opponent. So that's where the analysis paralysis can come in, of you're just like, okay, like,
well, you can't think that far ahead, because it could change right before your turn. But then on your turn, I mean, this has to be up there with games of the number of possible moves is like astronomical.
Yeah.
It's like any of the 25 squares could be done in 15 different ways.
Right. So it's that part, definitely may not be some people's cup of tea, but I find it a very interesting kind of puzzle of both, maximizing what you're able to do while trying to not set up your opponent. You have kind of all of these god powers that you can get that can give some really powerful abilities and whatnot. I think probably the reason it just, hasn't been talked about, and the one that maybe it's even still kind of on the fringe for me is like, I enjoy it, but I just find it's hard. It's a hard one to pull out. It's more challenge, like it's more, it's kind of so much of a mental exercise that it feels like it's kind of stepping into some of these like other heavy games that I have, like it's not particularly short, especially if you're playing with like more than 2 people. And if you have, playing the turns can take a while of, people figuring it out. And so it's that challenge of, it's a fun game, but is it more fun than, some of these awesome games that I have that might fall into a similar space? So this one, I'm still kind of figuring out kind of long-term where it'll land. I really enjoy it. It's very different from, kind of anything that I have in my collection. I love that puzzle, and I don't know, I grab onto it, and enjoy it, but I don't know, may not be everyone's cup of tea. And you played this once.
I did play it once.
And I can't.
And I remember enjoying it.
Yeah.
I don't think I was like I mean, like you said, it falls into a weird spot. I always have a hard time with these, like, it's like the step above kind of the welcoming games, where it's like, okay, I'm not going to pull this out, with this group, but then the type of people who are above that often want to skew even heavier. And so I just have the hardest time finding the ones I really enjoy and that want to play again and again.
Yeah. So we'll see. But that is my number 3.
My number 3 is one of the oldest games in my collection. Like, it might be tied for the oldest game in my collection. And it's one that, despite us having it for so long, most of my plays weren't with you, actually. I mean, we definitely played it, but I used to play this with our sister a decent amount. And it hasn't gotten as many plays in recent years, but it's one that when I have gotten on the table, I just really like this game as a kind of simpler 2-player game. This is Lost Cities.
Oh, and we used to play this a lot together.
Yeah, it fell off at some point that I just like remember we wouldn't play it so much as I would with some other people. But this is from the prolific Reiner Knizia card game that has a ton of tension. This is early on when my wife and I, and I'm kind of feeling out her taste in board games, which she definitely is much more casual in what she enjoys. And it was like, oh, maybe Lost Cities, and I kind of forgot how cutthroat this game is because it's like you are holding cards to deny the other player from getting them and like trying to, get these expeditions. And I mean, it's like very head to head. Learning that was not really what she's looking for in a game. Plus I'd played it so much. I was pretty good at it. So it just wasn't set up to succeed.
Yeah.
But, the tension in this game, I mean, you have this hand of, I think, 8 cards, and every turn you have to play a card. And that either means you're going to one of your expeditions or you're discarding it. If you discard it, you are making that card available to because then after you play a card, you draw a card. And so if you discard it, your opponent can take it right then and use it. But to play it into an expedition means you are now committed to scoring that expedition. And the expeditions, you have to get at least 20 to break even, and more than 20. And there's only numbers from 2 to 9. And so it's tough because it's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be good in this yet, but I don't want to give them this. And oftentimes you'll get to a point where, okay, my opponent is doing a blue expedition, and maybe they even put some of the handshakes down, which you have to play first, but like multiply the amount that you're going to get out of it. And so I'm sitting over here, with the blue 6 and 8 or something, and it's like, I cannot give this to them. Like, if as long as they get to 20, even giving them the 6, if they're multiplying by 3 or by 4, is a huge point total. Well, that basically means my hand size got smaller because unless I think I can get enough blues to like pull off this weak, 20.1 to at least break even, I just need to hold it. And so it's such an interesting tension and where to push. And you really do want to hit some really big expeditions where you get those multipliers. There's the thing that if you have at least, I think it's 8 cards, including the handshakes, you get like a 20-point bonus. And you play out the whole deck back and forth as you're trying to set up these expeditions. And I think it's just a brilliant design of like tense back and forth card play with such simple rules. And I also enjoy that you play, at least for the full game, 3 rounds of it. And each round is scored, and the scoring can range pretty broadly in how much you score.
Yep. So
we've seen games where you have a really big comeback or something, because it is possible, like if you really get some of those big multipliers and stuff. So yeah, I've still got our worn old copy of Lost Cities.
I tell you what, you talking about it, I'm like, I could play some Lost Cities again.
Play some Lost Cities.
We played this actually a good amount early on. I think I probably stopped playing it because, like you said, it's very cutthroat. And when
I guess it's true.
When that was a time where let's just say cutthroat games maybe brought out the worst between us.
Yeah, I'm surprised this one survived the collection, actually.
I know. I was like, I need to stop playing this. Our mother's done with hearing Daniel yell from the other room. It really is a good design, and it's funny. You just talking about it again, I could like feel the tension of your holding the card. You're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? But the other person's feeling that too. So
exactly,
there you go.
Feel the burn.
Feel the burn. My number 2, Ryan, is a very new game to my collection. Thus hasn't been talked about. But is one that I'm excited about, and one that we played together very recently. It's a 2-player game, and is one that just is very unique in kind of the decision making that it has you do. And this is going to go to Targi.
Oh, Targi. My brain was like, we already talked about Splendor Duel. We already talked about Yin. Is Daniel going to mess up this list and say something he shouldn't?
I did not.
No, he avoided it. I forgot.
We played Targi together. My wife and I actually got to play a game of it as well. And this one's just so simple and yet unique in how it makes you think in this kind of head-to-head game. You've got these kind of grid of cards that are out here that are either kind of basically resource cards to get more things, or these kind of I forget what they're called, but cards that are going to end up, you're going to be collecting to get scoring and oftentimes have abilities and stuff like that. But the way you get those cards is you have to place one of your 3 pawns out on this like border of out here that are also actions. So you're also getting the action of the border space that you go on, but that's basically locking in, that column or that row for you. And so you're going to end up placing all 3. And so you're going to get the actions of the 3 pawns where your pawns are on the border, but you're also going to get the thing of where they intersect if you like draw a line. So, which maybe that doesn't make
which is always like 2 intersections.
Yeah, if you optimize, it's always 2. So the restrictions are you can't place in a column or row that your opponent is in, which is very interesting. So like if you play here, unless I use a special action card, can't get any of the cards in that column or row. So there's blocking there, this robber's going around, which is blocking a space as well. So it creates really constricted worker placement. And figuring out like, how do I leave my options open but get to the things that I want to get to. So I found that just worker placement element of it to be really interesting. And then, your new cards are constantly popping up in the middle. And so figuring out, what are my best options? Do I get a bunch of resources and go after more cards, for this kind of set collection thing you're doing down below? Do you go for, to get these, golds that you can convert into victory points? Some various kind of unique things. And it was one that just, after playing it a couple times, I was like, man, it's just a fun, unique 2-player experience that plays, fairly quickly and was a good time. So, I got this. I happened to pick this one up. Someone was, selling it for real cheap, and I know it's an older game and was excited to try it.
It's been on my list, to check out ever since back when we were almost playing Lost Cities. It's almost that old, I think.
Really?
But it's such an interesting, because every move you make is picking which things you're going to have an option for, but also what you're going to block. So you're always like, which 3 cards, do I both want, but not want you to have access to? Because you can see your opponent's tableau. You often know kind of what they're interested in.
Yep.
I really enjoyed my one play of that. Other than it was a little longer than I thought it was. Like it's more like a 45-minute game.
We started this late at night, and then we
thought like, oh, let's quick do Targi.
Yeah.
Like, this is a little thinkier and longer than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Cool. Yep. Good one. My number 2 is pretty unique in my collection. I don't know really even what would be a close game in my collection to this. It's definitely got kind of like a component gimmick, if you want to call it that it really leans into these transparent cards for its main mechanism in the game. This is Canvas. And this is this game where you are building these paintings. The transparent cards actually have like images that are going to overlap to make this full painting image, as well as like generate a random name for the painting, which means nothing for the gameplay in the, it's nothing about how you score, though I will say it is a huge part of the experience because everybody loves, showing off their painting that they made and here's what it is. And it is a cool aspect of the game. But what you really care about are all the icons that are in the bottom row. Because there's 5 columns, and based on the order that you put these transparent cards, different ones are going to be showing or not showing because it only, you can only see the topmost one. And so you're trying to make these paintings. You're collecting these cards with kind of this simple drafting row thing. But then you're trying to make a painting of 3 cards that's best going to score with the scoring conditions that have been randomly selected for that game. And so you might have a game that's like, okay, you get, the red ribbon if all 5 columns have an icon. So you don't want an empty one. But you also get something if you have, 2 triangles. There's like 5 different shapes or like icons that are there. So it's like, okay, I might want those. Oh, but I also get this if I can get like things in a row that are the same, and so depending on what you have in play, it has a different feel, but it's this puzzle of layering, right? Of like, how can I best layer these things to get the right things to show through? And I find it to be a very fun, satisfying little puzzle for what is a very simple game. Like when you think about the actual like taking of the cards, it's just like take which one you want from the row. You have to pay these little inspiration tokens if you want to take further to the right.
Yeah.
But then you're sitting there with this hand of cards and starting to kind of think, how can I do this? And your hand limit is 5, so you can actually go past 3 and kind of, can I do something better? It's a good thing they capped it at 5 though, because each card you get, the permutations of how many ways you could layer these things. And I have seen this game break a few people's brains, and it is something that keeps it from being maybe like this I would bring this out with anybody kind of light game, because it's pretty thinky puzzly, and I think for some people that like layering aspect of it, of this, like it just like does not click for them, and if it doesn't click, it's hard to have a good time with it.
Maybe hard to know if it'll click for people,
and it's hard to know. Yeah, exactly. But it's one that I've had a really good time with. I actually recently picked up the expansion that adds some kind of fun little. I mostly just want new cards, just like more variety there, more scoring conditions. I haven't had the chance to play it yet. But yeah, the last few times I've played it, I feel like it's gone up for me. I'm just like, you know what, for how quick and kind of light this is, I do really enjoy this puzzle of trying to figure out which ones, and then the aesthetic of it is great with these finished paintings. And
the theme's great when you're married to an artist. So
yes, my wife likes this game, though she has also realized, like, that one is like, I have to be in the right like mood to play kind of a thinkier, puzzly game.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of know what you're getting in for. But yeah, really nothing like it, I don't think. I mean,
I think I've only played that one once. I think
Really?
Yeah, I want to say I've only played it once on one of our,
that was probably right when I first got it. Yeah. Because I distinctly remember our sister-in-law just crushed. Like, it was like
she
the
had
first
the most
time
incredible score ever.
And I think I've played the game so many times since, and it's still the highest score I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It was like almost every painting she did hit every scoring category. Yeah. And maybe it was, we were using some of the more basic ones that are like overlap a little, but obviously the rest of us didn't do that well. So there you go. That's part of why we like, tracking we use the BG Stats app to track things. It's fun to see, like, that's the top score of all time in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Okay, Ryan, number 1. My number 1 almost was talked about in our top 50. It was 51.
51.
So sad. Poor game. This one, gosh, this has just been a unique game in my collection because the game is awesome. It's so great. And I can't even figure out why it doesn't get played more. But man, it's just such a solid, well-designed game. And this is going to go to the Quest for El Dorado.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like this game is really great in terms of it's, a race, essentially. And so and I love it because the map tiles, you can do different pre-made maps. There's a way to do kind of a create your own and whatnot. But it's all coming out of kind of your drawing, this deck building. You're drawing cards and you're playing and moving, and then you're being able to buy more cards into your deck. And so it's always that tension of, do you purchase better money cards, which don't help with moving, which is the ultimate objective of the game, but you're able to then buy better cards. When do you pivot from that to like cards that, are help with movement and whatnot? You have to be looking ahead at like, what are the big, should I set myself up to get through like a really hard obstacle, and whatnot? Because, essentially you play cards and they have to match the terrain to be able to move through that terrain. So if you want to go across water, you got to buy a card that can let you go across water, and certain terrain spots have number values. And so like, if I want to go maybe a shortcut will have a 4 forest or something, I gotta have a 4 forest card in my hand. You can't even add 4 ones. It has to be a full 4. And so I love that, like planning ahead and then trying to grab cards, but you also got to hope the cards come up, in the way kind of where you're at and whatnot. This is such a great game. Like, and every time I've played it, it goes over so well. It's kind of this. You feel the tense kind of race feel of it. Outside of Heat, this is probably like my next best kind of racing style game. I don't know why it doesn't get played more. Yeah. And that's a hard one for me to figure out. I don't know. It's maybe a little bit is kind of what we were talking about earlier of just falling in a when is that the choice, of,
Yeah.
it's maybe slightly higher than a gateway game, although it's really not
it's
that
pretty
complex.
close though. Yeah, like that
really
would be
not.
one I would be.
Yeah,
I would pull
and maybe
out.
it's just one I just gotta go to more. 'Cause
Like I think it's got pretty good appeal, like to appeal to a new player with just the style
think so, too.
of it and
I
the
think so, too.
presentation. I remember honestly, my biggest complaint with that game was I wish there was more setup variability with which cards were available.
Yeah,
Like I think it's like they're mostly always
they're all
there.
they're all the same.
Yeah, and I think even if you get the expansion, I think it just adds to that. Like it doesn't swap, which there's probably some balance things with making sure things are in play.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I guess you get variability from the map.
The map,
It's like
the map
big,
is what drives
the big thing.
it. Is so.
And who knows? Maybe some expansions would help breathe some life into it for you.
Right. Or
I know
even-
there's.
Well, I was just gonna say, or even they could have had variability around like a player power or something. I don't know.
forget what some of the expansions add. I
Yeah.
remember being like, "Ooh, that looks cool." Though, like this is a game that the additions and the expansions is all really confusing because there's like a non-American edition that looks different, and then they've been like expanding that, but I don't know that it's
Yeah.
compatible with the. So it's a little bit confusing, like the actual how you go about getting more stuff for this game.
Right. But the mechanics are so good.
It is good.
It's
Yeah.
so good, and it's simple and fun. So there you go. Just
go.
missed my top 50. We'll see what this one, how it's looks going forward. But gotta get to the table again. Quest for El Dorado.
There you go. More love for Reiner Knizia. Had a couple appearances here. My number one is a game that Daniel does not like.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, and it's a very specific. I mean, kind of like a message from the stars in terms of like it's like there's gonna be a very specific type of person that's gonna like this game. And in my life, there's two people I know.
Oh, yeah, I know what this is.
My older brother and my mom are the two people that I think those are the only people I've ever played this game with.
Oh no, that's not true. I played it once.
Yeah, it's true, Daniel. But just yeah, that was very funny. This is Paperback. And Paperback is a game. It's basically take Dominion style deck
love
building
Dominion.
and make it a word game.
Oh gosh, I hate
And
words.
so your cards have letters, and every turn you're trying to make a word using what you have. And the better words you're making, you're getting more money to buy more letters. And a lot of the letter cards have abilities like, oh, this one will give you more money if it's the first letter in your word, or this, some of them are 2 letters. And you're ultimately, just like Dominion, trying to end up buying kind of the victory point cards. Mm-hmm. They really didn't deviate much from the Dominion front. It was literally like exactly Dominion as a word game.
Nice.
But it works really well. I mean, if you like looking at a hand of letter cards, especially with a little bit of constraints of like, okay, it'd be even better if I could put this one first or this one next here, and then trying to think of a word that would do that. That's going to be the determining factor on whether you're going to like this game or not. I do enjoy that. I mean, it's not like my favorite. I'm not like a word game fanatic, but I do enjoy word games. Much higher on my list was Paperback Adventures, which is the solo roguelike version of this, which I think really amps it up even more as far as the fun of the experience with all these different items and combos and stuff. But this is just the very pure and more multiplayer approach, and it's one that I've had a really good time playing with that group that will play it with me, and they both like it as well.
This is one of the
good at it. Both our brother and our mom are good at.
They're both probably. She's whooped me at Scrabble.
This game,
Holy
I
cow.
think I've won a lot of times we played, but it's because I think I understand more the strategic pacing element of like just the Dominion style, like when to get the victory points and stuff. But I think both of them are better at the actual like coming up with words than I am.
Well, that's the thing. Like this game, I can look at and see why it's a great game. I totally understand that. I just don't.
But when you spell, cat for the third time.
Yeah, you can only spell cat so many times, and it doesn't reward you that much, man. Yeah, I am not a big spelling guy. Our mom's taking me to town on Words with Friends when we used to play.
You guys still playing that?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
We used to have some
battles.
I can only take so much of that demoralizing beat downs in my life.
Yeah.
So, very nice, Ryan. Very nice. That is a good one. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. We have a link to all 10 of these games down below if you want to check them out for yourself. And we got a couple more videos here that you can check out. Click on one of those. Why not? We've got more for you. We'll see you in the next one.